It's a remarkable skill for a Photoshop user to be able to restore old or damaged photos to near pristine conditions. There's always a market for that. However, there's always going to be those times when you're going to want to take a photograph and make it look like it's been damaged or stained or something like that. And that's what we're going to do in this video here. Notice this image I've got, and notice how stained it is and ruined it looks and everything like that. Well, it didn't start out like that. In fact, if I turn off all the layers, you can see the image is totally fine. But through a few simple steps, I was able to make it look like it's stained and completely ruined. And this is just a few simple steps. If I really dug in on the steps I'm about to show you, you could really make it look completely damaged. So that's what I want you to take away from this, is just not copy what I do exactly as you see it, but experiment with each step and see what kind of different things you can come up with, because you never know what kind of damage you're going to want to do. So let's reverse our thinking and actually go in here and destroy this photograph. So here it is, completely fine. So the first thing I want to do is start with a texture that's going to look like it's a really stained and damaged photo. And you can certainly use anything. You can go out, take your camera and shoot some concrete or shoot the bark of a tree or something like that. Anything will make a good texture. When I was searching around for texture for this particular image, I actually found something you never would have thought to use, but it actually worked out pretty well, and that is a piece of bread. Now, as you can see, got an interesting texture on the bread here. There's a lot of spots, and it's just kind of like got an interesting configuration about it. So I thought, that would make pretty interesting texture there. So I'm going to grab my marquee tool here, my rectangular marquee. I'm just going to draw and select the inside area, or the inside texture area of the bread. Grab my move tool. I'm just going to take that and drag and drop it into my working document. Now, I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to press Command or Control T to bring up the free transform. I'm just going to scale this out disproportionately, just because it's a texture, it really doesn't matter. I just want to kind of put these dark spots in various places around, kind of offset it right there in the center there. And we'll press enter. Now, to blend this with my original photo, we're of course going to use a blend mode. And what I'm going to use actually is this here. If we go into the blend mode menu, I'm going to go from normal and go down here to linear burn, and watch what happens to my photo. Looks really stained. It's kind of cool. And if you really, really look at it, now that you know it's the texture of a slice of bread, you can actually see it in there. But before, when you saw that original photo, I bet you didn't think that, did you? So let's go in here and damage this up a little bit more. I'm going to select that bottom layer. I'm going to go ahead and double click on it and make it a regular layer. Let's go ahead and unlock that, and we'll click OK. And above this layer, I'm going to go ahead and apply an adjustment layer. Let's go into the adjustment layer menu. I'm going to choose Hue Saturation. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and check on Colorize. And for the hue, we're going to enter 40. I'm going to pop over to saturation, and let's enter 45 on that one. And for the lightness, let's take that down a little bit to about -5. That looks pretty good. Now, the beauty of this being an adjustment layer is that I have control over the opacity and the blending as well. So I'm going to go over here and drop the opacity to about 50%. And you'll notice that some of the original color is trying to creep through. There's a hint of that blue in the sky coming through. And this is just how an old photo would look. If over time the colors tend to fade and just kind of yellow with the paper and everything like that. And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing some of the original color, but the yellow aging of the paper starting to show through and really giving it an aged look. Well, now let's go and take it a step further. I'm going to go over here and select that layer, and I'm going to pop a new layer right beneath it. I'm going to hold down my command key and click the new layer icon. And I'm going to go ahead and fill this layer with white. And since white is my background color, I'm just going to press Command Delete, and it'll fill that background layer in there. Well, I'm going to select this layer here. I'm going to go ahead and apply a layer mask to the original photo layer, because we're going to paint some interesting things in here. But I want to create a brush before I do that. So let's go ahead and grab our brush tool, and I'm going to go into brush menu, just select this number 75 here. Now we need to modify the brush a little bit. So let's go over here into the brush options and change this up a little bit. So we've selected this brush here. I'm going to go into the brush, or actually the shape dynamics for now. And over here I'm going to take the size jitter all the way up to 100. So it really kind of gives me a scattered look here. Now I am in fact using a Wacom pressure sensitive tablet, so I'm going to go and leave this pressure setting on. If you're not, you can go ahead and leave it to off. And you'll notice that the size jittering will still play, but the pen pressure, the pressure sensitivity won't be in play there. And it will still work fine, no problem. Now next thing I'm going to do is activate the scattering. And I'm going to put the scattering at around 250. And I think that might look pretty good. But now, see, it's getting way too many dots here. So I'm going to actually go into the brush tip shapes and actually space these out a little bit. Let's go to about 50% on that. And then we're going to go over here and activate the dual brush. If we turn that on, and we want to select a brush that's kind of like scattering around here. So, oh, selected the wrong one there. I want to make sure you highlight that tool, the dual brush, before you go changing the brushes. So we're getting kind of a scattering brush here. Notice what's going on in our effect here. It's kind of like a spatter, you know, just kind of like a ripped up, grungy look to it. And that's looking pretty good, so I think I like that so far. Now, the one last thing I'm going to activate on this is this setting right here, wet edges. Notice what happens to the preview when I activate wet edges. Kind of gives it a faded out look. And when we paint, you'll start to see the difference here. So let's go over here. I'm going to go ahead and click this out. And since we're painting on a layer mask and we want to reveal or actually hide parts of this image so the background shows through, let's paint with black. So set black as your foreground color. Make my brush a little bit bigger and just start painting in here on random spots, and notice what it's doing. It's just giving me kind of a grungy tear through there, like it's really worn out the photo. And I'm just randomly just spotting. And if you're using a mouse, you can just randomly just go around and just click at random areas, and that will start to really kind of grunge it up. Now I may be doing a little too much here, so if I am, you can just hit the X key and bring white to the foreground and just paint back in. And because we're using wet edges as setting on our brush, it doesn't paint back completely. It's kind of like got a translucency to it that looks pretty good. Same thing if you're removing. If you go over twice, the area will get a little brighter. It almost is like the actual paper itself is starting to show through. So over on this side, maybe we can make it look like the photo's really worn down, like the ink is really worn down to the paper at this point. Just like that. Like I said, it depends on how much you really want to destroy your photo when you're doing this. You know, obviously in that first example, I was, you know, kind of taking it easy, but, you know, go crazy if you want. See what kind of cool things you come up with. Now, one last thing I want to do is I want to put the border out here like it's got, and like almost like an older photograph, how it had the white border. And we're going to do that simply by holding down the Command key, or actually no, holding down the Shift key, Shift selecting both the original layer and the adjustment layer. I'm going to press Command or Control T, and then just scale that in. And to be honest, I didn't really have to scale the adjustment layer. It covers the entire layer anyway. So just select the photo layer is all you need to do. And we'll just scale that in a little bit. And notice what's going on. We're getting that same texture on the outer edge. So see the big difference that texture makes? If we just did it with the brushes and the adjustment layer, it looks almost there, but not just yet. But by simply adding that texture layer and then changing that blend mode, it looks really messed up. Now, the one last thing I'm going to do is select that original photo layer. Now, if you look at old photos, not only does the physical nature of the paper just start to deteriorate, but the image itself tends to get blurry, especially if it's been stained with any liquids or anything like that. So I'm going to go over here into the toolbar, grab my blur tool with a relatively low setting. Let's go with about 25% and just randomly kind of blur the image in random spots. Close to the damaged areas mainly, because that's where the ink is really, or that's where the staining is really, you know, ruined the image. And perhaps around the edge of the photo as well, just so that edge isn't so clean. See how nice and sharp and clean that edge is? Wouldn't really be that way on an old damaged photo, so let's just kind of blur that edge there. And let's do one more thing. I'm going to go over here and grab my smudge tool, again with a relatively low setting, with about 20. I'm just going to kind of just give these edges a little nudge. And notice when I do that, what it's doing. It's kind of burning that edge there. And all I'm doing is just kind of clicking and just kind of shaking my mouse here. Well, in my case, I'm just holding down the pen and just kind of wiggling it. But if you had a mouse that you would be doing, just kind of gives it a little bit more of an age look there. And that's pretty much it. So I think you can see with just a few simple tools, you can really age a photo and really give it a grungy, really messed up look in just a few steps. And notice how many, look, we've only got 3 layers going on here. If I turn these 2 off and then shift on the layer mask, shift click on the layer mask, you can simply see there's our original photo. And in just a few steps, we've really grunged it up. So try it on different photos, have fun with it, and see what kind of cool things you can come up with. We'll see you next time.